Daniel moved into the apartment on a rainy Saturday in late November. The building, an old structure from the 1920s known as the Camden Arms, stood on a quiet street lined with sycamores whose bare branches scraped at the windows. He'd chosen this place for its vintage charm, original hardwood floors, ornate crown moldings, a small wrought iron balcony overlooking a neglected courtyard. The rent was reasonable. Maybe too reasonable. On his first night, as he unpacked boxes under the dim overhead light, he heard muffled voices through the walls. It was an old building, so sound seeped easily. At least, that's what he told himself. Still, something about those voices was off. They didn't sound like normal neighborly chatter. They sounded hollow, faint, perhaps just pipes groaning. He decided, shutting the thought out. That night, he dreamed of corridors, endless hallways branching in impossible directions, doors that led nowhere. He woke sweating and cursing the stress of moving, but the dream lingered in the corners of his mind, refusing to fade completely. The next morning, he met a neighbor in the lobby, an older man named Bryce with stooped shoulders and watery eyes. When Daniel asked if anyone in the building had unusual habits, noisy late at night, for example, Bryce just shook his head. "We all keep to ourselves," he said. Then, lowering his voice, "except, you might hear rumors. Old wives' tales about a hidden room." He paused, lips twisting as if regretting his words. "Don't pay them any mind." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "A hidden room? Sounds like urban legend stuff." Bryce shrugged and hurried off. An odd introduction, Daniel thought. But he let it go. For now. Over the following week, Daniel settled in. He furnished the apartment modestly, second-hand couch, a bookshelf of old paperbacks, a lamp with a warm glow in the evenings. But the atmosphere of the building unnerved him, always twisted in subtle ways that made them feel longer at night. The elevator clanked ominously. He kept expecting to see signs of extensive renovations behind the ancient wallpaper. He overheard two tenants whispering by the mailboxes. It happened again. "Did you hear?" one said. "I swear someone disappeared." The other hushed her. "Don't be ridiculous." They moved out, yet their faces were pale, uneasy, piqued. Daniel gently probed his immediate neighbors. Most were tight-lipped. The few who spoke offered vague cautionary tales. "The building has a history," said an older woman on the floor below. "People vanish sometimes. Or so they say. Something about a door that shouldn't exist." Curiosity gnawed at Daniel. He searched online but found nothing concrete, just a few obscure forum posts referencing the Camden Arms and strange disappearances. One post read, "There's an apartment inside the building that occasionally reveals an extra door. Those who enter never return. No one knows why." Another comment dismissed it as nonsense. Still, the seed was planted. Daniel tried to dismiss it as superstition. Yet he began noticing odd details in his own unit. The measurements of the walls didn't match the floor plan the landlord had given him. According to the blueprint, his living room should be slightly larger. It was as if a chunk of space was missing behind one of the walls. A hidden closet. Maybe. Or something else. Late one evening, after a glass of wine, Daniel tapped along the walls, listening for hollow spots. In the corner near the radiator, the wall sounded different, denser, muffled. He resolved to mention it to the building's superintendent, Clara, a no-nonsense woman he'd met only once. The next day, Daniel cornered Clara in the lobby while she sorted mail. She was in her 50s, hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes sharp. When he mentioned the suspicious wall in his apartment, she stiffened. "The building is old," she said curtly. "Walls have layers. Old pipes. Dead spaces. Nothing unusual." "What about these rumors of a hidden room?" Daniel pressed, trying to sound casual. Clara's jaw tightened. "You've been talking to gossips. There's no hidden room. People come and go. Don't indulge childish stories. Focus on your own life." With that, she snatched the rest of the mail and marched off, leaving Daniel even more suspicious. That night, he heard tapping sounds, light, rhythmic, from beyond the wall with the odd measurements. He held his breath, pressing an ear against the plaster. Was someone on the other side? The tapping stopped as soon as he listened. He tried knocking gently. No response. As he lay in bed, half asleep, he heard it again, faint voices behind the wall, murmuring unintelligibly, as if the wall separated him from another room, one that shouldn't exist. A chill ran down his spine. Desperate for answers, Daniel visited the local historical society. After some digging, he found old newspaper snippets. The Camden Arms, once grand, had undergone multiple renovations. In 1962, a tenant vanished under mysterious circumstances, no record of them leaving. Belongings still in place. Rent unpaid. In 1979, another disappearance. In the early 1990s, rumors flared of a phantom apartment door appearing inside certain units. One article quoted a former resident, "A door appeared in my living room wall one night. I thought I was dreaming. I opened it. Saw a dimly lit room with old furniture. I panicked and fled. The door vanished by morning. After that, I moved out immediately." No one had concrete evidence, just anecdotes and decades-old hearsay. But these stories aligned with what Daniel heard from neighbors. More troubling, a note scribbled in the margin of an archived forum printout: "The room chooses its victims. Curiosity draws it forth." Daniel's stomach knotted. Curiosity? He was certainly curious. Was he feeding this phenomenon? Making himself a target? Returning home, Daniel found a folded note slipped under his door. Written in shaky pen: "Stop searching. It knows you now." No signature. His heart skipped a beat. Someone was warning him off. Or maybe something wanted him afraid. That night, he dreamt more vividly. He wandered his apartment at midnight, and where the suspicious wall should be, he found a door. Opening it led into a small, dimly lit room, an armchair, a wooden dresser, a lamp that flickered strangely. In the dream, he heard breathing all around him, but saw no one. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him and vanished. He woke gasping, soaked in sweat. In the morning, he convinced himself they were just dreams triggered by anxiety. Still, he decided to remain vigilant. He placed a thin piece of tape along the baseboard by the suspicious wall. If a door appeared, maybe it would disturb the tape. He tried sleeping with the lights on, radio playing soft music to calm himself. Despite these precautions, the building felt more oppressive. The corridors outside his unit seemed quieter at night, as if the tenants held their breath. He found himself looking over his shoulder when returning home. In mirrors, he sometimes thought he caught movement behind him. Flickers of shadows. One article quoted a former resident: "A door appeared in my living room wall one night. I thought I was dreaming. I opened it. Saw a dimly lit room with old furniture. I panicked and fled. The door vanished by morning. After that, I moved out immediately." No one had concrete evidence, just anecdotes and decades-old hearsay. But these stories aligned with what Daniel heard from neighbors. More troubling, A note scribbled in the margin of an archived forum printout. The room chooses its victims. Curiosity draws it forth. Daniel's stomach knotted. Curiosity? He was certainly curious. Was he feeding this phenomenon? Making himself a target? A week passed without incident. Daniel began to think he'd overreacted. Then, one evening, as he relaxed on his couch reading a novel, he caught movement from the corner of his eye. He turned to see what it was. There, in the very spot where he suspected extra space behind the wall, stood a door. The door was plain, unnumbered, and slightly smaller than a standard apartment door. It looked old, the wood darkened with age, the brass knob dull. His blood ran cold. He blinked hard, still there. He grabbed his phone, heart racing, to record a video. On camera, the door appeared slightly blurred, hard to focus on. He approached carefully. The air near the door felt cooler. He placed a hand on the knob, icily cold to the touch. Fear and curiosity warred within him. He called out, "Hello?" No answer. He considered calling for help, but who would believe him? Summoning courage, he tried the knob. Locked. He tried again. Twisting harder, no give. He knocked lightly. The door made a hollow sound, as if the room beyond was empty. The whispering he'd heard before returned, now clearer, coming from behind that door. Daniel stepped back, mind racing. The door was real, or at least appeared real. If he forced it open, what would he find? Another dimension, a trap, a lost room full of vanished tenants' ghosts. The door vanished the moment he turned away, just blinked out of existence. He rushed forward, touching the empty wall. This couldn't be happening. Was he losing his mind? Shaken, Daniel decided to confide in Bryce, the older neighbor who first hinted at the rumors. He found Bryce smoking on the fire escape at dusk. After Daniel recounted his experiences, dreams, the changing door, Bryce looked stricken. "You saw it?" Bryce whispered, voice trembling. "Then it's chosen you." "Chosen me for what?" Bryce stubbed out his cigarette. "I've lived here 20 years. Every so often, someone sees that door. They poke around, and then they vanish. There's a pattern. All victims were too curious. The room thrives on curiosity. Once it has your scent, it tries to lure you in." Daniel swallowed hard. "How do I stop it?" Bryce shook his head sadly. "I don't know. Rumor says if you see the door often enough, it will eventually open for you. And once you enter, no one knows. Some say the room is a gateway to another realm, feeding on souls. Others think it's a cursed leftover from a botched renovation, like a bubble in reality. Either way, no one returns." A chill wind rustled their hair. Daniel felt trapped. Running away wouldn't help if the room could appear anywhere inside his apartment. He thanked Bryce for his honesty and retreated inside, his mind a storm of fear and uncertainty. That night, Daniel slept fitfully. Around 3 a.m., he woke to a faint scraping noise. He flicked on a lamp. The door was back, in the same spot on his living room wall. This time, it was slightly ajar, emitting a soft, flickering light from within. His heart pounded. He considered calling the police. But what would he say? That a phantom door appeared in his apartment? By the time they arrived, it might vanish. He was on his own, picking up a heavy flashlight and a kitchen knife, though what good would that do? He approached the door. The whispers behind it intensified. He thought he heard his name. He gently pushed the door inward. It swung open silently. Beyond was a small room dimly lit by a single old-fashioned lamp on a wooden table. The wallpaper inside was peeling, revealing old plaster and wood beams. An armchair faced a mirror on the far wall. On a small bookshelf lay scattered personal items, photographs, letters, keys, small trinkets. The air smelled stale and musty. Daniel stepped inside, forcing himself to keep one foot near the threshold. He wouldn't close the door. He shone his flashlight around. No people. No immediate threats. Yet the atmosphere weighed on him. In the mirror's reflection, he saw movement, silhouettes standing behind him, spinning around. He saw no one. His breathing grew ragged. The whispers filled his ears. Distinct voices overlapping. Another one. He should not have come. He seeks what he cannot understand. Daniel shouted, "I don't want trouble. His voice faltered. The door behind him creaked. He turned, horrified, as it slowly began to swing shut on its own. He lunged to stop it, but it slammed shut with a deafening finality. He grabbed the knob, wouldn't budge. The door vanished, leaving just a blank wall behind him. He screamed, pounding on the wall. The whispers laughed softly. Now Daniel was inside the hidden room. He tried calling out for help, his voice echoing strangely. He tried using his phone, no signal. He recorded a video pleading for help. But who would see it? Exploring the room, he found the items on the bookshelf belonged to past victims, old ID cards, a hairbrush, a child's drawing, a ring. Each item carried an aura of sadness. He picked up a Polaroid photo showing a young couple smiling. Handwritten date 1978. Probably people who vanished decades ago. In the corner, he found a small chest. Inside were letters on yellowed paper, each describing how they ended up trapped. One wrote, "I tried to find the truth. The room took me. It feeds on curiosity and memory. To leave, one must sacrifice something precious. Memory. Curiosity." Words from the rumors flooded back. Daniel realized that just like in the stories he'd read, he might need to make a terrible choice. The whispers grew louder, as if sensing his thoughts. He shouted, "What do you want?" and the voices quieted. In the mirror, a figure emerged, a tall, gaunt presence with hollow eyes. It didn't speak aloud, but Daniel felt its words in his mind. "You sought us. You fed the door with your curiosity. Now you are part of this place. But perhaps you can leave if you give it what it hungers for, something precious. A memory that defines you. A passion. A joy. Surrender it, and we may let you go." Daniel sobbed, his tears staining the dusty floorboards. Give up something precious? He thought of his happiest memory, the day he graduated. His family cheering. Or the memory of his first love. The warmth of that embrace. Without that memory, who would he be? But the alternative was endless imprisonment in this impossible room. He recalled the old stories. Someone escaped once, rumored to have sacrificed their cherished memory. It might be his only chance. Kneeling before the mirror, Daniel mustered his courage. "I'll give you my happiest memory," he said softly, voice trembling. "The day I felt truly alive. Confident. Loved. Take it. And let me go." The lamp flickered. Pain seared through his skull. He gasped, tears rolling down his cheeks. In that instant, he felt something torn from his mind. He tried to recall the happy moment he'd chosen, but it was gone, replaced by a dull emptiness and sorrow. The whispers hissed softly, seemingly satisfied. The mirror's figure nodded, then stepped back into darkness. The lamp's light steadied. Daniel turned to where the door should be. Heart pounding. A faint outline appeared on the wall, gradually solidifying into the door. He rushed forward, twisting the knob. It opened onto his apartment's living room, exactly as he left it. Morning light filtered through his curtains. He stumbled out, collapsing onto the floor, sobbing with relief. The door closed behind him and vanished. He was free. Over the next few days, Daniel struggled to carry on. He'd escaped a fate worse than death, but the price was steep. The cherished memory he had sacrificed left a hollow ache. He could recall the fact of its existence, but not the details. He felt less inspired, less himself. Neighbors noticed he was quieter. Bryce caught him in the hallway and offered a silent nod of sympathy. Mrs. Carter, passing by, gave him a knowing, sorrowful look. No one asked what happened. Perhaps they feared the answer. Daniel tried to resume normal life. He worked, ate, and slept. The building felt normal again. No strange whispers, no flickering lights. The tension had eased. Yet Daniel knew it was temporary. The room was timeless, patient. It had let him go now, but that didn't mean it wouldn't return. He considered moving out, but something held him back. Fear that leaving wouldn't help. The room appeared inside his apartment. Perhaps it could follow him. He rationalized that since he paid the price, maybe he was safe. But deep down, he doubted it. Weeks later, Daniel woke one night to a subtle difference in the air. He rose and walked the dark hallway of his apartment. Everything looked normal at first. Then, from the corner of his eye, he thought he saw a door where none should be. When he turned, it was gone. Just a trick of the light, he told himself. But in the bathroom mirror, he glimpsed that dimly lit room behind him for a split second, just a flicker. He spun around, nothing. Trembling, he realized that the room had left a mark on him. By sacrificing his memory, he'd forged a bond, ensuring the room could find him again if it chose. Daniel felt a quiet terror settle in his bones. He could never be certain the room wouldn't return. Perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not this year. But eventually, if his curiosity ever flared again or if his fear made him vulnerable, the vanishing room could appear once more, hungry for another piece of his soul. As he turned off the bathroom light and returned to bed, he understood that some urban legends don't end with a clear victory. They linger, haunting survivors, leaving them forever changed and forever uncertain. Daniel closed his eyes, tried to sleep, but the echo of whispers remained in the silence, reminding him that the door within the walls was never truly gone, only waiting for its next moment to appear.